Thanksgiving is one of the most beloved holidays in the United States, but its history is far more complex and fascinating than the simple narratives we often hear. Here are 5 facts about Thanksgiving that challenge the traditional narrative and reveal the surprising history behind this cherished holiday. 1. The first Thanksgiving wasn't actually a Thanksgiving. The event commonly referred to as the First Thanksgiving in 1621 was not what the Pilgrims themselves would have recognized as a true day of Thanksgiving. For the Puritans and Separatists, Thanksgiving was a solemn religious observance marked by fasting, prayer, and reflection. It was a communal act of expressing gratitude to God for specific blessings, such as surviving a harsh winter or the safe arrival of a ship. What occurred in 1621 was, instead, a harvest festival, an entirely different tradition with roots in English agrarian culture. After a successful growing season, the settlers at Plymouth organized a feast to celebrate the fruits of their labor and their survival in the challenging environment of New England. This multi-day event included feasting, games, and possibly the participation of the Wampanoag people, who had helped the Pilgrims learn to cultivate the land. The historical accounts of this gathering are sparse. Edward Winslow, a leader of the Plymouth colony, provided the most detailed description, though even his account is brief. He wrote of a meal involving wildfowl, venison provided by the Wampanoag, and other local foods, but there is no mention of turkey, pies, or many of the dishes now associated with Thanksgiving. The event was festive, but it was not framed as a day of solemn thanksgiving as understood within the religious practices of the time. It wasn't until centuries later, in the 19th century, that this 1621 feast was reframed as the First Thanksgiving. This reinterpretation was largely driven by New Englanders seeking to link their regional traditions to a national narrative. The event became mythologized, with details added and exaggerated, ultimately transforming it into a foundational story of harmony and gratitude between settlers and Native Americans. The reality, however, reveals a more complex picture. The 1621 gathering was a reflection of practical survival and cultural exchange, rather than the religious observance we now associate with the term Thanksgiving. It highlights the fluidity of how history is remembered and reimagined to serve changing societal needs. 2. Sarah Josepha Hale's decades-long campaign. Sarah Josepha Hale's unwavering dedication to establishing Thanksgiving as a national holiday stands as one of the most remarkable campaigns of 19th-century American cultural history. A prolific writer and editor, Hale was deeply committed to the idea that Thanksgiving could serve as a unifying occasion for a rapidly changing and often divided nation. Her advocacy began in the early 1820s, but it was through her role as editor of Godey's Lady's Book, the most widely read women's magazine of the time, that her influence reached its height. Through editorials, letters, and articles, Hale tirelessly promoted the concept of Thanksgiving as a national day of gratitude and reflection. She envisioned it as a time for families to gather, celebrate their blessings, and reinforce moral values, a vision informed by her New England upbringing, where local Thanksgiving traditions were well established. Hale's efforts were not limited to public advocacy. She wrote numerous letters to presidents, governors, and other influential figures, urging them to support the establishment of Thanksgiving as a fixed, national holiday. For decades, these efforts were largely ignored or met with polite acknowledgement. At the time, Thanksgiving was celebrated on different dates in different states, primarily in New England, and there was no national consensus on the need for a unified observance. Her persistence bore fruit in the 1860s, a period marked by the profound divisions of the Civil War. Hale saw Thanksgiving as a potential balm for the fractured nation, a day that could inspire unity and gratitude amid the turmoil. She directed her appeals to President Abraham Lincoln, emphasizing Thanksgiving's potential to strengthen national bonds. In 1863, Lincoln issued a proclamation declaring the last Thursday in November as a national day of Thanksgiving, citing the importance of reflecting on blessings even in times of hardship. This proclamation marked a turning point, transforming Hale's decades of effort into a national reality. Thanksgiving became a recurring national holiday, celebrated consistently each year, with Hale's vision at its core. Her campaign exemplifies how cultural traditions can be shaped and institutionalized through persistent advocacy, reshaping national identity in the process. Her role as the Mother of Thanksgiving is not merely a title but a testament to her remarkable influence on American cultural history. 3. Thanksgiving was once celebrated on different dates. For much of its early history, Thanksgiving in America was far from the standardized holiday we recognize today. Before becoming a fixed national event, Thanksgiving was celebrated on different dates, with regional and local traditions dictating when and how the holiday would take place. This variability reflected not only the decentralized nature of early American governance, but also the diverse cultural practices across states. In the colonial period, individual governors would declare Thanksgiving days in response to specific events, such as military victories, abundant harvests, or relief from hardship. These declarations were ad hoc, tied to immediate circumstances, and often steeped in religious overtones. By the 18th century, this practice evolved slightly, with New England states institutionalizing Thanksgiving as an annual autumnal observance. Yet, even in New England, the specific dates varied widely, and the holiday's adoption beyond the region was inconsistent. As the United States expanded westward, New Englanders carried Thanksgiving traditions with them, but the holiday's adoption was uneven. Southern states, with different cultural and agricultural practices, were slower to embrace Thanksgiving as part of their annual calendar. While it was gaining popularity in northern states, Thanksgiving remained a regional tradition rather than a unifying national event. The Civil War era saw an increased push for a unified Thanksgiving date. In 1863, President Abraham Lincoln's proclamation set the last Thursday of November as a national day of Thanksgiving, marking a significant step toward standardization. However, even after Lincoln's decree, the implementation of the holiday remained irregular. States had the autonomy to determine whether to observe Thanksgiving, and many southern states resisted the holiday, associating it with northern cultural dominance during Reconstruction. The final push for uniformity came during Franklin D. Roosevelt's presidency. In 1939, Roosevelt controversially moved Thanksgiving up 1 week to extend the holiday shopping season and stimulate the economy during the Great Depression. This decision created significant public backlash, with critics mocking Franksgiving and many states refusing to comply. For 2 years, Thanksgiving was celebrated on different dates across the country, with some states adhering to Roosevelt's change and others sticking to the traditional date. In 1941, Congress intervened to resolve the confusion, passing a law that officially set Thanksgiving as the fourth Thursday in November. This decision cemented the holiday as a consistent national event, but it also marked the culmination of centuries of negotiation between local tradition and federal authority. Thanksgiving's shifting dates serve as a reminder of how even widely cherished traditions can be shaped by politics, economics, and regional differences. 4. Thanksgiving and the Macy's Parade connection. The Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade has become an iconic part of the holiday, but its origins are closely tied to the rise of consumer culture in early 20th century America. The parade was first held in 1924, not as a celebration of Thanksgiving itself, but as a marketing strategy designed to draw shoppers into Macy's flagship store in New York City. At the time, Macy's was rapidly expanding and looking for innovative ways to distinguish itself from competitors. The idea for the parade was inspired by similar events in Europe, where grand spectacles were used to attract attention and create a sense of community celebration. For Macy's, the goal was clear: to herald the start of the Christmas shopping season and cement the store's position as a holiday destination. The inaugural parade featured employees dressed in costumes, elaborate floats, and animals borrowed from the Central Park Zoo. It concluded with the arrival of Santa Claus, symbolically marking the transition from Thanksgiving to Christmas. This connection to the shopping season was deliberate, aligning with Macy's broader marketing strategy to dominate the lucrative holiday market. Over the years, the parade evolved into a grander spectacle. By the late 1920s, live animals were replaced with oversized helium balloons, featuring characters like Felix the Cat. These balloons became a signature element of the parade, capturing public fascination and reinforcing the event's family-friendly image. The introduction of national radio broadcasts in the 1930s and television broadcasts in the 1940s further transformed the parade into a nationwide phenomenon, extending its reach far beyond New York City. The Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade not only reflects the commercialization of Thanksgiving, but also highlights the role of media in shaping modern holiday traditions. By bringing the event into millions of homes, television cemented the parade as an integral part of the holiday, with its annual broadcast becoming a tradition for many families. While the parade's primary purpose has always been tied to marketing, its cultural impact extends beyond consumerism. It has become a symbol of celebration and a shared national experience, showcasing creativity, entertainment, and community. From its origins as a promotional event to its status as a beloved holiday tradition, the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade illustrates the complex relationship between commerce, media, and cultural practices in shaping modern holidays. 5. The myth of the Pilgrims and Native Americans. The image of Pilgrims and Native Americans sharing a peaceful feast in 1621 has become one of the most enduring and widely taught narratives of Thanksgiving. However, this portrayal is largely a product of 19th and 20th century mythmaking, rather than historical fact. While there was indeed a gathering between the Wampanoag people and the settlers at Plymouth, its context and significance have been greatly simplified and romanticized over time. The actual event, as described in limited contemporary accounts like those of Edward Winslow, was a multi-day harvest celebration rather than a formal Thanksgiving. It involved food, games, and the presence of Wampanoag leader Massasoit and approximately 90 of his people. The Wampanoag likely contributed venison to the feast, and the Pilgrims provided wildfowl. However, the harmonious scene often depicted in textbooks and popular culture overlooks the broader context of tension, survival, and the precarious alliance between the two groups. At the time of this gathering, the Wampanoag were navigating complex political and survival dynamics. Devastated by disease brought by earlier European explorers, their population had been severely reduced, leaving them vulnerable to rival tribes and European colonization. The Wampanoag's engagement with the Pilgrims was strategic. They sought allies against regional threats. For the Pilgrims, who had endured a brutal first winter with significant loss of life, the alliance with the Wampanoag was equally critical for learning to farm the land and ensuring their survival. The transformation of this encounter into the symbolic First Thanksgiving occurred much later. By the 19th century, New Englanders began to elevate this story to bolster regional identity and emphasize themes of cooperation and gratitude. In the context of an expanding nation, Thanksgiving became a vehicle for promoting unity and shared cultural values. These ideals, however, obscured the reality of colonization, land dispossession, and violence that defined much of the relationship between settlers and Native Americans. Modern historians and Native communities have worked to challenge and complicate the simplistic narrative. They emphasize that while the 1621 gathering did happen, it was neither the origin of Thanksgiving nor representative of broader settler-indigenous relations. Instead, it was a fleeting moment of mutual necessity in a much longer history of conflict and exploitation. The myth of the Pilgrims and Native Americans sharing a harmonious feast reflects not historical reality but a constructed narrative that served the cultural and political needs of later generations. It underscores how historical memory can be shaped and reshaped, often at the expense of marginalized voices, to align with evolving national identities and values. Today, Thanksgiving continues to be re-examined through these lenses, revealing its complex and contested origins. We'd love to hear your thoughts on possible future topics. What areas of human evolution would you like to explore next? Leave your suggestions in the comments, and let's keep the conversation going. As always, our references and further reading are listed in the description below if you'd like to dive deeper into the subject. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode. And do not forget, subscribe to The Knowledge.